Adventists have, at least officially, continued to insist throughout its history that Roman Catholicism has not fundamentally changed and that it will not change in the future. The Roman Church may, as Adventist pioneer Ellen White suggested, now present a fair front to the world, but it remains unchanged and, quote, beneath the variable appearance of the chameleon, she, that is the Catholic Church, conceals the invariable venom of the serpent, unquote. I believe it is time to distance ourselves from this characterization.
Hello dear viewers, welcome to By His Grace Network. I believe the Lord is blessing you with the messages which we put on this channel. If you are new to this channel, I want you to do the right thing by subscribing to the channel, liking the videos, sharing the videos, telling somebody about this channel so that you do your part in spreading the gospel. Let's have a word of prayer. Father in heaven, thank you for the viewers of this channel. Thank you for the subscribers. I pray, Father, that you bless these people. Bless those who are going to subscribe and those who are viewing. Father, I pray as we await for the soon coming of Jesus Christ, I pray that every person who will view this channel may be counted worthy to meet the Lord as he appears in the clouds of heaven. In the name of Jesus I pray. Amen. Brothers and sisters, I want us to read from the book of 1 Peter chapter number 4, verse number 7. The Bible reads, "But the end of all things is at hand. Be therefore sober and watch unto prayer." Brothers and sisters, I want you to understand that the Bible is not lying by telling us that the end of all things is at hand. Indeed, we can see things happening in the world, in the Christian world, in the political world. These things are all pointing to the soon coming of Jesus Christ. But brothers and sisters, in this video, I want to show you what is happening in the SDA Church. Something very concerning, something very touching, something very shocking, which is happening in the church, which some leaders of the church are doing, which are a sign that the end of this world is at hand. I'll share with you a few quotations from the book Great Controversy. Let me begin by reading from page 444, paragraph number 2. "But there has been for years in churches of the Protestant faith a strong and growing sentiment in favor of a union based upon common points of doctrine. To secure such a union, the discussion of subjects upon which all were not agreed, however important they might be from a Bible standpoint, must necessarily be waived." So there is in the Christian world and the SDA Church that there's a growing tendency, there's a growing sentiment in favor with the Roman Catholic Church. Now listen to the next one. "Romanism, now regarded by Protestants with far greater favor than in the former years, in those countries where Catholicism is not in ascendancy and the papists are taking a conciliatory course in order to gain influence, there is an increasing indifference concerning the doctrines that separate the Reformed churches from the papal hierarchy. The opinion is gaining ground that, after all, we do not differ so widely upon vital points as has been supposed, and that a little concession on our part will bring us into a better understanding with Rome. The time was when Protestants placed a high value upon the liberty of conscience, which had been so dearly purchased. They taught their children to abhor popery and held that to seek harmony with Rome would be disloyalty to God. But how widely different are the sentiments now expressed? Brothers and sisters, we are told that in the past, people saw that union with the papal church, the papacy or the Roman Catholic Church, was a sign of disloyalty to God. But things are changing today, and not only in the other Protestant churches, but in the SDA Church, which claims to be the remnant church. We can hear, brothers and sisters, and you are going to see in the videos which I'm going to show you, that sentiments have changed now. People are now speaking in favor with the Roman Catholic Church. People from the SDA Church are now saying that we are not different from the Roman Catholic Church, and we are the same. People are now advocating for the Roman Catholic Church. And this was seen many years by Ellen White, that this was going to happen towards the end of this world. So we can see that this is a sign showing that Jesus Christ is coming and the end of the world is near. Brothers and sisters, I want to tell you, the messages you are going to see in this video are very much concerning, very much touching, very much heartbreaking. If you indeed understand the Bible prophecies of Revelation chapter 13, and you understand the prophecies of Daniel, and you understand great controversy, then you cannot advocate a union between the SDA Church and the Roman Catholic Church. Oh, brothers and sisters, I want you to listen to this video.
Our distinguished speaker, who has come to us all the way from the Netherlands, is Dr. Reinder Brunsma. He is a retired pastor and church administrator of the Adventist Church. He grew up Adventist and has spent his entire working life in his church in a range of different roles in pastoral, publishing. Retired, he is still active in the church, primarily in the Netherlands and Germany, though often elsewhere in Europe. Dr. Brunsma.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon among so many of you. The occasion that brought me here is that recently a new book of mine was published. I did my doctoral work at the University of London in 1992. And then my topic was the Seventh-day Adventist attitudes towards Roman Catholicism from 1844 to 1965. It seemed that the First Vatican Council, 1965, was a good cut-off moment. It was published by Andrews University Press the next year, and it was interesting to see that actually some 3,000 copies of that dissertation were then distributed or were sold. Many people have asked me over time to go back to this project and add another chapter, maybe rework some of it and add another chapter, bringing it up to date, dealing also with the period of 1965 to the present. Finally, I did that and submitted the manuscript to Peter Lang Publishers. And they just, some weeks ago, published it in a nice little book. They did well. The only thing I don't like about it is the price, and some of you have already mentioned that to me. But little could I foresee that there would be so much commotion around the publication of this book. And I'm really not sure why it caused so much more trouble after 30 years, since it has been around basically in a similar format for a long time. After all, it is called the history of a turbulent relationship. So I'm trying in this book to deal with the facts. How have things gone? What is the background of some of the things that we as Adventists believe about Catholicism? And I've tried to sketch in particular the 19th century background. Well, I hope this book will help to make many Adventists look in a different way at other Christian movements and the Roman Catholic Church in particular. If you should, even if you've seen the price, want to purchase a copy, there will be some flyers that will be handed out at the door as you leave. And it says on the flyer also that there is a 30% discount when you order it in the way that is given, and with the code ADVENT. So, well, it's on Amazon, of course, as well, but this is as much as I want to say about the book, and I hope it will not only be an occasion for commotion, trouble, but also a blessing to some people. Let me then come to my talk. Adventism and Catholicism in a changing world. What can we learn from each other? And I'm excited to stand here before you and together with others who are sitting behind me, be part of this special program that is linked to the publication of my book. Most of you will know that the organization of this program caused some commotion, but I'm truly grateful that this new venue was found and that so many of you have come. My lecture builds on the content of my book, but aims to extend several threads from the past into the future. And I want to suggest some ways in which Catholics and Adventists can actually learn from each other. The readers of my book will note that Adventists have, at least officially, continued to insist throughout its history that Roman Catholicism has not fundamentally changed and that it will not change in the future. The Roman Church may, as Adventist pioneer Ellen White suggested, now present a fair front to the world, but it remains unchanged and, quote, beneath the variable appearance of the chameleon, she, that is the Catholic Church, conceals the invariable venom of the serpent, unquote. I believe it is time to distance ourselves from this characterization. The medieval church of the centuries before Trent, and even the Church of Vatican I, is not the same church as the community that Pope Francis presides over. Just as the small Adventist church of the Adventist pioneers is not the denomination of 2024, with its 23 million members under the leadership of Pastor Ted N.C. Wilson. The Catholic Church and the Adventist Church are among the religious organizations that have a truly worldwide presence. Global membership of the Catholic Church now stands at around 1.4 billion. Per mid-2023, the Adventist Church had over 22 million members, with an official presence in 212 countries. According to Adventist Church historian George Knight, The Catholic Church and the Seventh-day Adventist Church are the only churches that can claim to be truly Catholic. That is, in the original sense of the word, general. Their worldwide presence, in particular, is visible in their extensive educational and medical networks. One of the most remarkable aspects of Adventism was the extreme reluctance in its early years to adopt any organizational structure above the local level. The Adventist Church has, however, gradually developed into one of the most tightly organized religious movements in the world. It claims to have a democratic structure. Let me see. With the local church at its basis. But it cannot be denied that the Adventist administrative structure has, in actual fact, become more and more hierarchical, with a de facto steadily increasing power of the President of the World Church. William Johnson, prominent Adventist author and scholar, pointed out that we notice more and more how authority in the Adventist Church no longer flows from the bottom to the top, but rather from the top to the bottom. This led him to repeat the question George Knight asked in 2017, how Catholic do we really want to be? We find another remarkable parallel in the sphere of dogma. In the Catholic Church, the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith, that is since 2022 the new name for what was known as the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. This then, the dicastery, serves as the guard dog for the purity of doctrine and the correct application of church discipline. The Adventist Church has experienced a remarkable development with regard to its body of doctrines and its intensifying determination to protect official Adventist teaching. The early Adventists did not follow most other denominations in formulating a formal creed. But over time, the Adventist Church decided to create a statement of what is now 28 fundamental beliefs, which in actual practice functions very much as a creed. While Adventists will emphatically and consistently argue that the Bible is their only source of their theology, those with any knowledge of historical theology will acknowledge that Adventist theologians never worked in a theological and philosophical vacuum and had no immunity against the various theological traditions that influenced them. Since 1975, the Biblical Research Institute, located at the church's headquarters office, plays a crucial role in defining and safeguarding Adventist doctrine. The doctrine of papal infallibility, which was promulgated during Vatican I, has been heavily criticized by Protestants in general and by Adventists in particular. But although official Adventism does not ascribe to any infallibility and inerrancy to Ellen G. White, many church members are convinced that her prophetic endowment ensured that her writings are not only theologically, but also historically and scientifically correct. And in my view, unfortunate common aspect of Catholicism and Adventism is the continued refusal to give women their rightful and biblically mandated place in the church. In the controversy about the ordination of female pastors, time and again church leadership claimed that once a decision has been reached in a convocation of the global church, this must be obeyed as the final word on that particular issue. Another important parallel in the domain of ecclesiology between Adventism and Catholicism is the special position of their church vis-à-vis other churches. Catholics no longer hold as strongly as before to Cyprian's view of nulla salus extra ecclesiam, no reading, no delivery outside of the church. But it still stresses the unique position of their church as the true church to which the separated brethren must return. Adventists have never believed there is no salvation outside of their church, but they also claim a very special status for their denomination as the remnant church of Bible prophecy. The parallels and the similarities between Catholicism and Adventism may be significant, but there are also many differences in our histories, our theologies, and our worship styles, but also with regard to religious devotions and popular forms of piety, and in the way in which the church is administered, and in the lifestyle trends of the members. However, in what follows, my emphasis is not just on what separates us, but rather on what we can learn from each other. There is, I believe, a solid basis for this approach. Together with many other Christian denominations, we affirm the fundamental truth of the Apostles' Creed, a fact that Adventists often tend to forget when comparing their denomination with other churches. The Roman Catholic Church is firmly rooted in history. Adventist Christians must not forget that for many centuries there was no other major Christian movement, and that even after the split with Eastern Christianity in 1054, the Roman Catholic Church remained, until the Protestant Reformation, the dominant Christian voice in the Western world and beyond. With our criticism of Catholicism, we often tend to forget how much we owe to the Church of the centuries. It was to this church that we owe the initial mission outreach into many parts of the world, including the evangelization of my own country, the Netherlands, in the 8th century. Adventists must be constantly reminded of how they are indebted to the Catholic Church in the areas of theology, spirituality, hymnody, religious art, and architecture, as well as in the creation, multiplication, and preservation of Bible manuscripts, and the cultural and other achievements in many domains by the different monastic orders. And today, Roman Catholic theologians continue to play an important role in all disciplines of biblical and religious scholarship. As distinct branches of the Christian Church, Catholicism and Adventism do indeed differ in the way they preach the gospel and minister to their members, but they face many of the same challenges. Let me briefly mention some of these. The Christian Church in the Western world is in many places fighting for its very survival, with an alarming exodus, in particular, of the younger generation. This is true for the Catholic as well as for the Adventist Church. Where church growth in the Western world is still taking place, it is mostly due to the arrival of large numbers of Christian immigrants from the South. But in many places, parishes are being combined, church buildings are closed and sold, and church attendance is dramatically down. And at the same time, there is a serious problem with regard to the recruitment of new clergy. Church historian Philip Jenkins wrote about the constantly accelerating shift of Christianity toward the South. He referred in many places of his book, The Next Christendom, to the experience of Catholicism. He could well have used Adventism as another example. In 1926, the point was reached that there were as many Adventists in the USA as there were in the rest of the world. Today, only 6% of all Adventists live in North America, and only 7% of all Catholics are found in the USA. Today, the vast majority of Catholics as well as Adventists live in the non-Western world. Together with other Christian communities, Catholics and Adventists face the staggering task of representing the Christian God and presenting the gospel to the vast urban metropoles of today's world, as well as to the area of our globe that missiologists refer to as the 1040 window, where only a small percentage of the population knows Christ in any real sense. Together with other Christians, Catholics and Adventists face the immense task of sharing Christ's love and the divine grace with a postmodern, ever more biblically illiterate, utterly materialistic, and deeply secular world. In spite of all our differences, we are partners in fulfilling the commission Christ gave his followers before he left this world. So then, what can Roman Catholics learn from Seventh-day Adventists? In his book, Catholics and Protestants, Peter Kreeft, professor of philosophy at Boston College, suggested that Protestants may err by seeing too little in Catholicism, and he confesses that as a Catholic, he may also run the risk of seeing too little in Protestantism. I surmise that Adventists have focused on what they consider wrong in Roman Catholicism and have thereby often failed to see the many good things in the Catholic Church of the past and the present. Before I mention some of these things that Adventists should try to see, allow me to suggest that there are also things in Adventism that might be good for Catholics to consider. First, I'm thinking of the Adventist focus on healthful living and other positive elements. There is ample documentation that as a result of their lifestyle, on average, Seventh-day Adventists are healthier and live longer than most other population segments. In some recent comparative health studies, Adventists fared better in several respects than Catholics. But that Catholics also have the potential of longevity is illustrated by the fact that two of the so-called blue zones, with an extraordinary number of people of 100 plus years old, are predominantly Catholic. For Seventh-day Adventists, healthful living is a practical implication of their stewardship theology. Christians must, Adventists believe, recognize God's ownership of everything, including their bodies. That means that it is not only a matter of common sense to take good care of our bodies, but that it is also has also an important religious connotation. Catholics might learn from Adventists in this regard. That is not to say that Catholics in their theology and praxis have over time totally ignored this aspect of their faith, but from an Adventist perspective, there is certainly room for improvement. This is also true for another element of stewardship, financial aspect. The Catholic Church and the Adventist Church are both rich in terms of real estate, but they often struggle to find the funds for the day-to-day running of their congregations and the operation of their organization. For this, they must mostly depend on the continued generosity of their members. Here also, the principle of stewardship is of prime importance. After experimenting with another method called systematic benevolence, Adventists adopted the biblical tithing system. The strong and persistent promotion of the tithing system has resulted in a much stronger financial structure than most denominations have. An extensive worldwide adoption and promotion of the tithing system could help the Catholic Church to operate at its many levels with fewer financial concerns. A third area where Catholics might learn from Adventists concerns their weekly day of rest. Of course, Adventists will continue to insist that by promoting the Sunday as the weekly day of rest, Catholics have gone against the biblical directive to keep the seventh day of the week holy. Moreover, Sabbath rest is in Catholic circles often practiced in the form of sport, shopping, and entertainment, despite official Catholic documents which describe the weekly day of rest in much more elevated spiritual terms. In his apostolic letter, Dies Domini, Pope John Paul II invited the believers to rediscover with new meaning the meaning of Sunday, with intensity the meaning of Sunday, its mystery, its celebration, its significance for Christian and human life. Adventist theologian Sigve Stonstad comments that it would have far-reaching consequences if that invitation would be accepted and translated into praxis, since the Sabbath, he says, contains a vast, untapped reserve, touching the deepest longing of human beings, regardless of their background or profession. Adventists are certainly not perfect in their Sabbath keeping, but I do believe that they are far ahead of Catholics in this respect and provide an admittedly imperfect model to follow. What can Seventh-day Adventists learn from Roman Catholics? From among the many things Adventists could learn from Catholicism, I have chosen 3 elements which I find quite meaningful for myself and my co-religionists. These 3 elements are closely intertwined. The first of these is the attitude towards time. The second concerns the role of art in the life of the Church, while the third focuses on worship. Time. Seventh-day Adventists always seem to be in a hurry. Time is short because Christ is coming soon. When the Church meets for its quinquennial World Congress, as a rule, the participants are told this may well be the last time the World Church convenes before it meets again in the kingdom. The belief that we live at the very end of time has given Adventist faith and practice a sense of urgency and a dynamic that has positive aspects. It gives the Church the characteristics of a movement, of being on its way towards a distinct goal, rather than being an institution that simply wants to continue to exist. Signs of the times are signals, we believe, that the end is near. However, there is another side to the coin. As time passes, the word soon demands constant qualification. The Church must deal with the cognitive dissonance of faulty prophetic interpretation and must deal with the problem of the delay of the second coming. This unmitigated emphasis on the nearness of Christ's coming and of the end of our present world has seriously impacted on Adventism in its long-term planning. How different things might things have developed if in the 1970s and 1980s the Church had been able to think a few decades ahead. However, the organizational system divides time in short segments, with plans and slogans limited to the next 4 or 5 years. New strategic plans, devised by newly elected leaders, are often rolled out before previous projects have been properly implemented and evaluated. The Roman Catholic Church has a different rapport with time. It has a sense of history and knows that change and development take time. It is used to thinking in terms of decades or even longer, rather than in terms of years. And it is much less focused on what the Church wants to do than on what it wants to be. Could it be that Adventists, in fact, relate to time in a very secular way? The seventh day has indeed a special significance, but apart from the Sabbath, time is the arena for activity. Days, weeks, months, and years are quantified within cycles of constituency meetings and general conferences. While for Catholics, the daily Eucharist and the Christian calendar give time a special sacred rhythm that supersedes the purely secular experience of time. The Adventist Church must somehow retain its sense of urgency, which is a vital part of its identity. But it must do so while learning from Catholicism that many things do take time, and that without a long-term view and a firm dose of patience, the Church loses much of its capacity to provide rest and stability, and is vulnerable to an obsession with activities that must be accomplished in a short time. Art. For centuries, the Christian faith and the arts have been close allies. Countless people have been inspired to greater piety by the paintings, sculptures, stained-glass windows, poetry, hymnody, and the great cathedrals of Christendom. The Roman Catholic Church has not only commissioned and collected great works of art, but more importantly, to a great extent integrated in its worship and ministries. With its much shorter history, its much smaller size, and its emphasis on the shortness of time that remains, it stands to reason that the Adventist Church relates to the arts in a different way. Most church buildings are functional and not very interesting from an architectural point of view. Some Adventist campuses have sculptures, most of which are quite naturalistic. Paintings in Adventist buildings tend to have eschatological motives. Adventist book illustrators and graphic designers have often produced good quality work, but most of it qualifies as applied art rather than as art in its own right. Catholic art has, as a rule, aimed at, quote, invoking and meditating the holy through the image and the work of the eye, while Adventists have tended, perhaps even more than most other Protestant denominations, to emphasize intellectual and verbal modes of communication and, quote, to educate the mind and elevate the spirit through the word and the work of the ear. This has created an imbalance, an almost total devotion to cognitive religion at the expense of experiential, emotional.
Listen to what he is saying. This is exactly what is written in Great Controversy 563, paragraph number 2. The defenders of the papacy declare that the church has been maligned and the Protestant world are inclined to accept the statement. Many urge that it is unjust to judge the church of today by the abominations and absurdities that marked her reign during the centuries of ignorance and darkness. They excuse her horrible cruelty as the result of the barbarism of the times and plead that the influence of the modern civilization has changed her sentiments. This is what this man is saying. An Adventist is saying that the Church of Rome has changed. We should not judge the Church of Rome by the actions, by the evils that she did in the past. Oh, brothers and sisters, this is very sad that these words are spoken by a Seventh-day Adventist.